Welcome back, everyone, to the Brain Soul Success Show. Wow, I got to tell you, I always start with you're in for a real treat, but I am so excited and honored to be with my good friend Gwen Foster here. Gwen and I started this journey years ago together. You will hear about that. She is the owner of NuVision USA and was founded in 2009. And it's a biofeedback bioresonance program. I'll let her tell you more about it. But it's amazing technology that I've been using since 2009 when you started that. Gwen's
Mhm.
also a Hannah Kroger practitioner. She's done neurolinguistic programming. She's a certified hypnotherapist, a biofeedback technician, personal coach. Um, is a really awesome practitioner in Texas. And I send people to her, and we've been working together for years on all of this. And I'm just so grateful to have you with me too. I mean, we were crying before we started, you guys, because we're so happy to see each other. Uh, it's just really been awesome. So we started this journey together. I mean, I guess, how did you even start getting into natural health?
Well, like most of us, I had my own health challenges, and after basically years of suffering, I um, found other ways, So basically, I was a really healthy person until I went on a trip to Africa in 1988. And when I went to Africa, I did everything they told me to do because I didn't know otherwise. I got the vaccines. I took the malaria medication. I didn't drink the water there. I didn't eat the salads or fresh stuff. I did literally everything I was told to do.
Mhm.
And when I came back from Houston over a period of, I guess, a year, it wasn't like I came back sick. There were many people on that trip. I was on a safari, like a photographic safari. And there was a number of people that couldn't finish the trip because of bowel issues or dysentery. And this is quite common if you go to like India, Egypt, Africa, it's quite common to have these issues. I didn't have those issues. So I was like, yay, me. I've got an iron gut. And then just slowly over a year, and you got to think about when this was 1988. I was in my 20s. So I was 28 years old, and pretty much I suffered into 38 years old, because
Mhm.
things just started going wrong. And chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, lupus, shingles, acid reflux, bad seemingly allergies to everything. Then I got diagnosed with Hashimoto's. I didn't even know what autoimmune, I didn't even know what that word meant. Like I had no idea what that meant. So of
Mhm.
course, now I know when you're autoimmune, you just become more allergic to everything. I'll go back to that story in a second. But anyway, I spent 10 years going to doctors. Not one doctor asked me if I traveled outside the country. Not one doctor did a parasitology test. Not one doctor really did anything except here's a drug, here's a steroid, and here's another steroid, and here's and I had asthma too, adult onset asthma. And Claritin back then was a prescription, and I had an acid reflux medication. So I had 9 medications a day just to live. I
Oh,
mean, just to function. And between lupus and shingles, it was quite miserable. And I think anyone watching this is kind of probably been told what I was, that those are incurable. I mean, I remember laying
mhm.
nude. I mean, I feel really bad for anyone that has autoimmune conditions, by the way. And I know you understand autoimmune like I do. But the
Mhm.
problem with autoimmune is people don't understand it. So when someone has cancer, you
Mhm.
have the whole community, the family, the fellow church members rooting for you, taking you doctor visits, feeding your kids. When you have an autoimmune disorder, they're like, what? I don't even know what that is. And on the outside you look fine. And well, except
Mhm.
for shingles and lupus, but on the inside you feel like a train wreck. But you don't get the emotional, mental, and verbal and physical support you get with like a stroke, a heart attack, or cancer. So it's very unfortunate,
It's
I think,
true.
for autoimmune people because people don't
Mhm.
understand even what you're going through. So anyway, 10 years of this, I probably took enough prednisone to put a horse down. Like back then, it wasn't a bad idea, right? They just give you more and more and more. If you complain, you either need an antidepressant or you need more steroid. And we've learned a lot since then, like about prednisone, and then Vioxx was the big drug, and then now it's canceled, and then the opiates were the big drug, and now they're canceled, and now it's Ozempic, and you know how it is. It's like,
It's just, yeah, it goes on and on. It really does. Yeah.
yeah,
We're
like
an
the
experiment. We're an experiment.
Exactly, and
We're
then they
being
just
experimented
bad
on.
idea. Yeah, and then
Yes.
my liver was damaged because of, I had fatty liver because of the steroids. So anyway, fast forward to Hannah Kroger, so 3 times, and this is where Louise and I met, but 3 times in a fairly short period of time when people really knew I was suffering, but I wasn't getting answers with the doctors. It was just another drug, more drugs, higher prescription, more doses. I'm not dumb though. When 3 people in a short period of time said, "Have you heard of Hannah Kroger?" Now, at that time, she had already passed, but her
Yes.
work continued on in Boulder. So, I was at Center Point, which is like the spiritual learning place in Houston, and there was a flyer there, a Hannah Kroger workshop. And then one of my friends that was working with someone in Sedona, well, have you heard of Hannah Kroger? And then I was like, okay, who is this person? I didn't even know she had passed at the point. So, it wasn't until then. I mean, I'm not going to say it was the only thing because changing my diet definitely helped. There were
Mhm.
other things that made a difference, but it was there that they're like, you have Epstein-Barr, you need a protozoa kit. The kind of the malaria thing came up between the
Mhm.
protozoa kit and the BE kit and all these kits. I remember back then, this is way before the flying situation. Then I made that really awful tea, that bitter Juanita tea,
Tea.
and I had
Yes.
that in a quart in a quart mason jar on the airplane with me. Well, you couldn't do that today. I had made my batch at Boulder and I carried that tea home. See, you couldn't do that now because you can't fly with liquids, but that was before a lot of the rules now. So that's what got me here was I'm on no medications. I don't have any of those conditions. And what I would say to anyone listening to this podcast is you don't have to live with those conditions. When doctors
Right.
say you have an incurable condition, if I would have stayed in that lane, I'd still be on the asthma inhalers. I'd still be on the acid reflux meds. If I hadn't changed my diet, I'd still be on
Mhm.
all those things. And I'm not on any of those things now. And I know I hear it all the time from my clients. They'll say, yeah, but shingles is incurable or lupus is incurable, or, you know, you just have to live with fibromyalgia. No, you don't.
No, you don't. Absolutely. And you know what? We did. We met at Hannah Kroger's, and I remember that. That was like, and it was the year after Hannah had passed. And it's funny, Gwen, I didn't know that you heard it 3 times. I did too.
Oh, that's
I heard
fine.
3 times I was supposed to go listen to this little grandma in Boulder. And I'm like, what's a little grandma in Boulder going to help me with? I was on that journey of, doing the organic foods and changing my diet and trying to get healthy and all that too from 3 autoimmune diseases. And so that's where we met. And then I remember the story I tell is that we went up for 3 summers in a row. So we did
Mhm,
like level 1, level 2 for like whole
mhm,
week classes then. And then we went up for a medical intuitive class.
mhm,
And I don't
mhm,
know if you remember this, but you said to me, you said, you know what, you and I are going to be teaching this someday. And I was just there to learn for myself and my family. And I had
mhm.
no idea that that would happen. And here it is, like the 24th class in Hannah Kroger that I'm teaching. Um,
Yeah,
but you
I
knew.
remember something I learned from you was food rotation, because you were ahead of me on that with because of the dental work with the food rotation stuff, and
Uh-huh.
I didn't even know what that meant. Like, you taught me the importance of food rotation with autoimmune, and
Hmm.
I do remember the same thing. The first class I was focused on me. The second class I was thinking more about friends and family. And
Hmm.
I did not either even go there with any intention, not only of not doing this professionally, but I did not have the idea of how this would fit into my life long term on that first class. The
Yes.
first class, your brain is like exploding because it's like so many new concepts.
Yes.
And I know you're teaching a class upcoming, and I think people should definitely take that class because it's everything changes in your brain, but it's almost so much that you have to take it more than once or more information just to let it really sink in, like to
Hmm.
really get it all. Because at first your brain's exploding, you're thinking about your own issues, but then after the first time, you can start thinking about other things and other people and loved ones and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's just really good work. She really was the grandmother of natural health. So that's where Gwen and I met. But our journeys, we both have like catapulted way over here since then. So you ended up starting your own business in Texas. And I remember visiting your center. because I was working in my home at the time thinking I should start a center. In fact, someone tripped on a step out in front, and I was writing for Truly Alive magazine, and Karen said to me, the editor, she was, "You can't work in your house anymore. You need an office." And I said, "Well, I think I'm a little bit scared to do that." And so I came down and visited you and saw your office. So we've been on this journey definitely together. So yeah, so share how we got in the world of biofeedback then. So how did that happen?
I think it was the same. We were in those classes, and Ginger Bowler had introduced the QXCI at the time, which later became the SKIO and the Indigo. And my background on that's a little bit different than yours because you were a teacher. But my first thing out of high school was electronics. So I was already my first degree is in electronics. So I have a natural thing with computers and programs and stuff like that. So to be honest, that very first class or two, I wasn't super confident in dowsing. I wasn't super confident in, it takes practice, right?
Mhm.
But the first time I had a pendulum, I'm like, what? Like, I don't know about this, but I was more scientific minded as far as, and I think a lot of people, I love dowsing now, obviously, and muscle testing, but I think when a computer tells you something, I don't know why, but people tend to really believe it more than someone dowsing in front of them. So when I saw Ginger demonstrate the QXCI, I was like, okay, I got to have that. I actually think if it wasn't while I was there, it was right after I got back to Houston that I purchased my first QXCI. So it
Mhm.
was right then. Is that what you did too? I kind of
Yeah,
remember.
it was shortly after that. I know that you got it before I did, but then it actually here's what happened. Janice bought it, you bought it, we all saw it up in Boulder, and it was an expensive program. It was like $18,000 at the time, and I didn't have $18,000. But you know what I said to myself? You were such a good friend, and I had connected so much with you. I was like, oh my gosh, Gwen has the program, Janice has the program, all my friends got this program. I have to have it too. And so that's what I said to myself. So I ended up finding the money and doing the same thing. Yeah.
Well, and then you and I had the same kind of pattern for a while there. Then
Mhm.
I think you got more than one. I ended up with two skios, and then I got the life system because it was a great deal at the time. And then we got the core system, and
Mhm.
then I got connected with NuVision. And so the progression of technology for you and I was also very similar because I think we've had the same
We have.
technology this whole time in 25 years. So
Yes.
a lot of people think that these technologies are new. They're not new. I mean, we knew about it 25 years ago, but it was out a few years before that, the EPFX. So
Mhm.
this isn't like new. It's like new to some people because they're just now looking for other options, maybe, but this is not really new.
And I'm so grateful. I bet you are too. I am so grateful for the learning. I mean, when I really think it, you and I are some of the first frequency medicine pioneers on the planet. And from each of those programs, I learned so much. And then I was blessed with doing naturopathic school at the same time that I was playing with that very first QXCI program. So I
Hmm.
remember I would actually see certain things come up on the program that would identify a problem that a client patient was having. And I was learning all about it at the same time as I was in school. And so I was able to really correlate and become like a really good detective.
Hmm. I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
Same thing. It made me have more confidence in my dowsing actually. Because
Okay.
when I would douse the book, the Help One
Mhm.
Another book, and then I'd get the same answer on someone's scan, I was like, "Oh, okay, that makes me feel better."
Yes,
So
yeah.
it did
Uh-huh.
actually more confident.
Yes, yes. But it really did shaped us as practitioners. And I do see that the best bioresonance, biofeedback practitioners, and probably even functional medicine doctors. And I'm just going to say that here because Hannah Kroger's work was better than naturopathic school for me in terms of being able to get root causes and be a good detective and know exactly what to do with someone. And I have total confidence now when somebody says to me, I've got XYZ, I'm like, well, okay, let's dive in and find it. Right.
Mhm,
And I look, of course, now at the emotional, the spiritual, and the energetic causes too. So we've moved forward. But it's just such good work. So the combination of what you've done, and then I love what you put together with NuVision. So your background as an electrician. So how did you even come about to put together NuVision, which is a if you're new here and you're listening, it is a biofeedback bioresonance type program. I'll let Gwen explain the words behind it better. But it is my favorite one, even though I've been in this world since 2003.
Yeah, me
And
too.
have had all these different biofeedback type programs. And, for some of you out there, I'm sorry, but it blows away the Healy. I mean, that's not going to do what this does.
Mm-mm.
Not that that isn't good. We have a lot of wonderful little programs like that now that people are using and purchasing for themselves. That's how far the technology has come. What Gwen and I are just describing here to you all is we started with it when it was newer technology, when it was like at the beginning of forming all of this. And some of these programs are way more deep dive than that. Would you agree? Would you agree with
Oh,
that?
I would agree, and I can compare it to Healy. I like Healy in that has the microcurrents, but on the information side, it's all a progression of technology because
Hmm.
I love my Skio. I loved it. I mean, it was like my baby, and I was very good at it, I think, and I know you were very good at it. You are very good at it. But, when you think about like my iPhone now, it's trying to compare this newest version of iPhone to a flip phone or to the big gray block or to, all the different phones we've had over the years. So what I would just say is it's a progression of technology. It doesn't mean an older phone isn't working. It
Hmm.
means that a new phone can just do a lot more. But the what happened with NuVision was I was always I'm always one that I'm a Virgo for one thing. So I'm always think something can be done better. But also I knew a lot of people like you do in the world of technology. And over the years of using the Skio and going to conferences and training things and then the core and the life system and all that, you just meet a lot of very interesting people. And
Hmm.
so through that, I had met my partners in the Netherlands, Kevin and Gerwin, and they actually, the interesting story was they had went to some of the other device owners because Kevin's a AI genius, and he was like, I can make this better. Like there's some flaws, and not bad things, just things that could be done better. And they were like, yeah, no, we're not interested. And he wasn't even trying to get paid for it. He was just like, I can do this and this and this and this. So
Hmm.
anyway, I knew of them. They knew of me. I flew over to the Netherlands and sat down with them. And we just said, this is what we're going to do. Kevin had already basically created it. So he created the engine. So he would be like, that'd be like the Bill Gates, of Microsoft. And then NuVision is the application on there that's the human health, and now we're working towards animal health. So, but basically, some of the things that once I had it, it's hard to go back is, the reproducibility, the ability to work with groups, the ability to create your own work sets. So you can put in your own data. Because what I always wanted with one of the other systems, for one thing, is I always wanted Hannah Kroger's work in there.
Yes.
Always. And
Yes.
that had been already approached and no one wanted to add it, and Gisela had given me permission to put it in NuVision. That had to be a part of what I was doing. Um,
Mhm.
that was really one of the biggest drivers for me initially. But then once I had the reproducibility and the ability to do with groups and seeing the suppressed and acute issues and the chronic and all these things, then it was just like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. But really, then I got really interested in the development of the technology as far as the data goes. And that's like what I offer, to the table. But like, let's say compared to Healy, like you said, if someone is using Healy for personal use, I think it has some good basic information, some flower essences, some basic homeopathy. I
Mhm.
don't know exactly how many items are in the database, but let's say it's 800.
Okay.
NuVision has 50,000 or more. So
Yes.
looking
Yes.
at a database and I'm trying to say, what's going on with Louise today? If it's not in the database, you're not going to get that result. It has to be in the database. So the bigger your database is generally the more information you're going to match to. But then, like, I know with the work, you're doing with the brain and the soul and the mentoring program, sometimes when you're trying to figure out what people's blocks are or, things you want to work on to get them to the next level, if you don't
Mhm.
have that possibility as an option to see that that's part of the problem, then like, how do you actually address it? You know, like, it's not just, well, this flower essence, that may not be specific enough. I mean, it might be helpful, like if someone's dealing with a specific emotion. But
Mhm.
anyway, so what it did for me, and there's no other system on the market in the world that I know of that's reproducible. What it did for me was give me more confidence, you know, that the
Mhm.
results
Mhm.
were accurate, and I was confident in the results. Because if someone is showing, can I tell a story? This is actually a pretty
Yeah,
amazing.
you know what I'm also thinking? I think that part of what I want to do with this is and not while I'm speaking with you, but what I'm going to add here for all of you is a little demo of that program.
Okay,
Of
that
the
would be.
NuVision program, because I want people to understand what you and I are talking about. We've been in this world for so long, and some people are new here and they don't even know what biofeedback or bioresonance is. And what Gwen is describing here is it is like this is like we were in the AI version of world in 2003. I mean,
Mhm.
this is like that. So if you can kind of maybe correlated with that a little bit. We're talking about a biofeedback computer. It's a computer program. It's a matching tool. And what Gwen is describing here is if you have a bigger database, it's going to find out you have lupus. It's going to find out that you have bacteria. It's going to find out that you have COVID. It's going to find out that you have, an issue from your grandfather. You know,
Right, and that's what I was gonna
I
say.
do deeper work with that. I don't even use computers. I use muscle testing and intuition and teach people to do it. So that's my brain system. But I love these programs and I back everything up with it. So my
Yeah,
daughter just calls me today and says, hey, my grandson's throwing up. Can you put him on the machine? I'll find out what he's got. I mean, I can intuit that, but then you're right, it'll give you more confidence. I'll put him on biofeedback and be able to actually tell, is it a certain type of bacteria that he's got?
yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
I'm glad that you said that about the matching tool, because I can describe that a little bit better. If I
Okay.
put in my client's name, date of birth, place of birth, that's like the target, like your cell number. I can't call Louise on my phone if I don't know her phone number. Well, I
Mm-hmm.
can't connect to your field if I don't have some basic information, but it's very small, limited information that we need. And then it's like creating a holographic space of that person and scanning that for imbalances in their field. And
Mm-hmm.
then, so that's the matching part. If the person doesn't match with the item in the data set, it doesn't come up at the top as being relevant. If it's not relevant, I'm not going to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
What I find a lot actually in that world is some people, and I'm sure Louise has seen this too, some people have been to like everyone in the world that works on Lyme disease. They're
Yes.
convinced they still have it 10
Mm-hmm.
years later, and then I'll do a scan of them and I don't see Lyme anything, because it's something else. But everyone has been focused on Lyme, and they're potentially missing that it's heavy metals in their mouth, or it's
Mm-hmm.
something else, Epstein-Barr or something else, but everyone's been targeted on Lyme. And so I think that happens because I think even in natural health, I think it's the same as Western medicine to some degree, and I'm not knocking anybody, but it tends to be that people get pigeonholed. If the practitioner survived Candida, they tend to try to put everybody in a Candida box. And if
Mm-hmm.
somebody held themselves with parasites, they tend to go in a parasite box.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the lane that they're going for. And what I find with NuVision is it helps me get out of that, because sometimes I listen to all the symptoms and I suspect it's something, but then
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I do the scans and I'm like, oh, I was wrong. It isn't that. It's this. And so I
Mm-hmm.
don't try to make them have something that they don't actually have. And so I think in that way it really shines. Also with muscle testing and dowsing, I think, you can muscle test or douse, like especially with emotions or spiritual stuff, the list that you have, but can you do it
Mm-hmm.
on 50,000 items? No, like that's
No,
impractical.
that's too
You're
many.
not
Mm-hmm.
gonna douse 50,000 items. So you can
Mm-hmm.
do like your lane of what you're focusing on right now with your client, like clearing emotions. But it would be too tedious and too long to go through that many thousands of items, just for like a first assessment, like where's the person at. But the story I was going to tell is one that I find a lot with people. I
Mm-hmm.
had and similarly. So starting out by saying a lot of times, like the Lyme story, a lot of times people will come in and let's say they show sexual abuse as their top issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say something to the client, have you ever had, any kind of sexual issues, conflicts, abuse, kind of open-ended. Yeah, but I've worked on that for 20 years and that's not an issue anymore. And they're very defensive.
Mhm.
Well, on my scan, if it's the top thing, then it's the top thing. They might have talked about it for 20 years, but that doesn't mean it's released, right?
Right.
It's still like right there at the top and it's still controlling their life. I learned something from Dr. Emoto, which I know you and I had our own experience with Dr. Emoto was, when he came to Houston one time, he talked about this layering effect of sexual abuse. He used that specific example. And so he's like, if you imagine someone being sexually abused, they're automatically going to constrict. There's going to
Mhm.
be constriction
Tightness.
because they're
Mhm.
being violated. That could be TMJ, that could be constipation, that could be anxiety. But he said generally you'll keep having this alternation of emotional, physical until the cycle is broken. But a lot of times it
That's
isn't broken. So you have this person with TMJ for 30 years and up ledger doesn't work and other things, mouth guards don't work because the sexual abuse is still there. They're still in that fight or
holding
flight,
it.
and so if you don't get to those root causes, which I know that Louisa's and I, that's been our focus ever since the Hannah work, you got to get to the underlying cause. But the
Mhm.
story from Boulder I was going to say is when I was there was this lady from Denver that owned a yoga studio. And she came to me with grief as her main complaint. Like she was just grief stricken
Mhm.
because her young child had died in a car accident. That had happened 10 years previously. She was in grief, support groups. She was doing one-on-one grief work. She'd been to a number of practitioners that had to do with grief. And when I did the NuVision scan on her, it showed severe visual separation conflict. And I was like, I don't even know
Interesting.
what that means. At first, I didn't initially know what it means. And I said something to her and I was like, and by the way, grief was nowhere on her scan. There was no grief
No
anywhere.
grief there. Mhm.
I said, well, and she just broke down. Like she was just bawling. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And she goes, she was in the car behind her daughter getting T-boned in the intersection. And so she
Ooh.
saw the impact. She was the first one to open the door and see her daughter dead. And so what she was reliving in her mind was the impact. Every time she was in an
Sure.
intersection, every time she closed her eyes to go to sleep, impact, impact, impact. So even though she had done all this grief work and everybody was focused on grief, where they were
Mhm.
missing the boat was no one had cleared her of the impact.
Right.
So the NLP technique on her to get that, out of her brain. And the next time I saw her, severe visual separation conflict didn't show up on the scan. And I asked her some questions and she seemed unaware of what I was even talking about. And I was like, whoa, I don't want to go back there. And I was like, do you even remember what we talked about the last time I saw you? And then she was like, I'm like, okay, well, I'm not bringing it up. So, and she's acting like she was doing better and fine. So I think that's important because people want to keep targeting the obvious known. And I think
Mhm.
with biofeedback technology, the AI matching technology, all these things, you can go so many layers deeper
Yes.
than the raw core emotions that most people think about: anger, guilt,
Yes.
um,
You've got to
depression.
get to the root cause like you're describing there, and whether you're using a biofeedback device or I teach it through my brain system where you go to those root causes, you find out what happened at age 6 or what happened with great grandfather, or you go back to that sexual abuse time and you have to clear it in a multisensory way. So
Mhm,
NLP like you do, and then I do the EMDR with it, but I do it like in a multisensory way, and I clear it in the field so that it
mhm,
sticks. Because otherwise it doesn't stick. And what you just described was an example of when it stuck. She didn't have
mhm,
that memory anymore. It wasn't fresh. It still happened, but it wasn't like fresh and in her face. So it cleared enough for her to allow her to be in her life again, right? And
yeah,
to finally let that go and let the visual of that go.
mhm,
Because it was
exactly,
visual. Yeah.
exactly. But that's,
Yeah.
I think, whether it's physical or emotional, I think that I would just say generally, if someone's stuck in a lane too long, like it doesn't take 10 years to clear Lyme. It doesn't take 10
No.
years to clear
Mm-mm.
grief if it's done effectively. And I think when people have to keep doing that, they need to reevaluate, because there's something else going on, either something else
Yes.
completely, or maybe something in their environment, their household, their family, their spouse, their job, something else that is keeping them stuck. And I think that that's also important.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting those root causes. And that's what I like about that the program, the NuVision program, and how you put that together. Is really, really brilliant. Gwen, the other piece of that program that I like that I want to share here is it's the only program that I know that also allows you to have it keep working on someone, meaning in
Mhm.
the field because it's connecting with you and it knows you by your name, your birthday, your place of birth. It's like sending a text message over and over again, but nothing happens on your phone. You're sending
Mhm.
energy continuously to help that person's brain, to help them get energy to whatever their intentions or goals are, whatever the program was that you set up on them. And there isn't anything like that. So the example that I have when I first started this was I had a little guy who was autistic, and I couldn't hook him up with the other biofeedback device with wires, and this was wireless. This was long distance, and yet he came to my office and was running around my office and doing all kinds of things. We were playing with games and all kinds of things, but I had him on the program with his mom there. And I did him every week, but I would broadcast it to go for like 2 months. So every week he'd get a new program that overlapped, that
Mhm.
helped his brain, that helped his nervous system, helped his parasympathetic, sympathetic nervous system, helped his language, helped his socialization, all of those things that he needed. And in 3 months, he was in school. And I was like, wow, that would have taken me 2 years with my other device. And it was because of that overlapping ability. So I use that with all my groups too. And like you said, it's reproducible and you can add your own stuff. I put a whole Geotran tray in there. Mind Gems is in there. Digestion is in there. I have a whole anti-aging tray in there. I put all my brain work in there. So all of that is in there. So when you think about how much is in that database, you're right. That's where you can get really, really, really good results with that. So this is the technology that Gwen developed and is using, and it's absolutely brilliant. Let's turn the corner a little bit and talk a little bit more about business. So your business, you're very successful in what you do. And you've been doing this for years and years now. But what are some of the biggest factors that you think has helped you become successful in all the you're an awesome practitioner, you're a naturopath to all the good work that you've been doing in the world. What would you give us as some tips to new people starting out?
Well, first of all, I would say that's a big question. Because there's been some good things and some things that, of course, don't work out. I think one is, well, first of all, my tip is time management. Like,
Okay.
time management is huge. If you're a social media person and your normal is you want to spend hours on social media, like, forget it. Also, second, taking care of yourself.
Mhm.
Some people get so like strung out, like with not having good boundaries, um, not having enough time, or feeling exhausted because they're trying to do too many things. I know a lot of people that actually specifically having to do with natural health, not just business, but you're still taking care of families. You're still trying to get your health right yourself. I mean, the first classes I took, I was not perfectly healthy, to be honest. You take the class and then you go to bed the rest of the day, because that's what we had to do. But it's important to feed ourselves, take care of ourselves, nutritionally, spiritually, figure out, through your courses, the emotional or spiritual blocks to get right. That's important because honestly, I don't want someone working on me that isn't right. Like,
Yes,
if
yes.
they're not balanced, if they got a lot of, skeletons in the closet that are messing with them, especially in energy work, I think that's super important to do the
Mm,
personal work first.
yes.
Um, I get kind of an icky feeling sometimes, at conferences and stuff where everybody wants to touch you and do something to you, and I'm very kinesthetic. So I would just say getting yourself right is super important. And I also think it's also important to not be a hypocrite. Like, I can't tell people to food rotate and eat a certain way if I'm not doing it myself.
Sure.
That to me is integrity, like, and do practice what you preach. I'm going to be honest and say that owning your own business is more work than I ever have done working for other people.
Yes.
No, just back to the broadcast comment. Louise and I used to spend a lot of time after hours setting up broadcasts for people that we wanted to help that was totally off the clock. And sometimes that was like hours a day, on the skio. And now we don't have to do that. But I remember those days. I remember doing that till 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, just to try to help others. And I also think it's important to have good help. Be able to trust and delegate. If you're really good at something, there's a great book called, I think it's called the ebook, the entrepreneur book. I think it's called ebook. And it's a book for entrepreneurs. And basically what it says is, if you're great at making a cake, then make cakes and delegate the rest to other people. Because what happens to a lot of small business owners is they try to do everything. And I get it, money is tight in a new small business. But if you try to do everything, then your passion for what you really do, and Louisa's eye is healing people, helping people. But if all our time is on admin and trying to figure out how to create a website and how to do stuff that isn't anything that I want to do, then you have little time left in the day to actually do your passion. So align yourself with someone that has the same passion for what you're doing. Find someone good to help and support you. I mean, those are things that have worked good for me. And I'd also say take risks. Like I've done things that did not work, and I have spent money. It took me 3 attempts to have a website products, and the first 2 times I gave
Yes.
up. Because so daunting, and it was so time consuming. But when I found the right person to help me, I was able, to get it done. And then I think the last thing is keep learning. I just last week took a remote viewing class. I've always been interested, but I always try to learn new things. And I've taken some classes that I was not very good at the medical intuitive thing because I don't see stuff. I have no sense of vision in my field at all, like through guided meditation or anything. And I remember the Willem Fuller class, the one about growing back your teeth and stuff. I took that class, that never worked for me, but it doesn't mean don't try it. I had a disrupted blood-brain barrier. I had one intention with taking Fuller's class, and that was to get my blood-brain barrier back. And it didn't work, but I've taken a lot of classes that I did that are somehow, all of us have our own bag of tricks. And the bag gets bigger and bigger, and we don't use some of them ever. And we use some way more than others, just like you have certain things that you love and I have certain things I love. But if I had never learned them, I wouldn't be doing it the way I'm doing it now, so.
Right. It all works together, doesn't it? It's like you synthesize all that and because the world is an information where there's so much information, right? And there's really maybe no new information. The new information is how we synthesize and how we put things together. So you have your own programs, protocols, ways that you work with everything that you learned. And you have your blood-brain barrier must be better now. You're brilliant.
No, thanks.
You
But
got it.
I also avoid food chemicals completely. I eat at home. I make my own food. I shop at the perimeter of the grocery store or the farmer's market. I don't buy packaged foods. I don't eat packaged foods. So I do the same things you've been doing and teaching for years. And so my blood-brain barrier just doesn't have a lot to react to, as far as food chemicals and neurotoxins and all those things. And so I do eat really clean, and I have for many years. I've had those days you go on a cruise or a trip or something and, you can't do the same thing, but those are very isolated.
Right, right. So it's heal thyself first, and you have very good self-care. So you eat healthy. What other tips would you say you could give people here on self-care?
Well, number one, get enough sleep, and sleep should be a priority. If you can't sleep, it's hard to heal, I think. In Chinese medicine, the adrenals has to do with our voltage, our vitality, our ability to heal. So a lot of times people are sleep deprived, and that should be sleep and digestion to me are the first 2 things that need to be really addressed and corrected, for long-term other benefits. Because you can do the best nutrition in the world, but if you have digestive issues like parasites or candida or H. pylori, you're kind of wasting money and effort because that's not really working for you. And then the
Mhm.
sleep, I see so many people that are sleep deprived, and it has to be a priority on self-care, good foods, good whole foods. I remember one thing I did Reiki attunements. I don't even know what year that was. That was about the time I met you at PMR. But when I did the Reiki attunements, my cravings for food changed. It was weird. But and I've seen some of the videos and pictures like Thornton Streeter showed of food that's been microwaved. I don't own a microwave. I haven't owned a microwave for 24 years, so it's not an option for me to microwave popcorn or heat up my tea or coffee. It's just, I do it the old fashioned way. I had an assistant once that was a young person that came in, and she was like looking around my kitchen because I don't have a place for it. And she had her food to heat up, and she goes, "Well, how do you heat it up?" Well, on the stove or in the toaster oven. And she thought that was so crazy, because then she started saying, "Well, how do you make popcorn?" It's like, well, I don't really eat popcorn, but if I did, I would have to do it on the stove. So though for self-care, it's that. And going back to what you said about the broadcast, I want to say one thing. Because this is a big autoimmune thing. You have to love yourself, like,
Yes.
and just to compare the broadcast, I loved your text analogy. I have never thought of that. But what if I could send Louise a text every hour if I had the time? I love you, Louise. I love you, Louise. I love you, Louise. I love you, Louise. She would feel loved. I mean, she may not feel it immediately. She may think I'm crazy, but after a few weeks, she's going to go, "Oh, like I really feel it." That's kind of what that broadcast is like, but it's
Yes.
true just of ourselves. Like, we have to love ourselves. No one's going to be the perfect weight, the perfect hair, the perfect body, the perfect whatever, but we have to, I mean, I'm not saying neglect yourself to the point of like obesity and not take care of yourself, but I am saying wherever you are, you have to start with loving yourself and then get healthier as you go. I do think that that's super important in self-care.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. I feel like that's what I'm doing with people. Like on a spiritual level, yes, they might come in with a health issue and we're working on that, but really it's about getting them back to being confident and loving themselves. And I call it
Mhm.
100% your soul's truth. Getting back because everybody, every soul on the planet is beautiful. You
Mhm.
just have to find it. You just have to look for it and find that within yourself. And it really truly is about peeling all those layers off of all the old trauma, of all those old emotions, of those things that were, that caused you to be out of balance in the first place. And I do believe that's what autoimmune is. I had 3 autoimmune diseases too. And I had no idea how much they were both emotional and spiritual and not just physical when I
Exactly.
first started, when I first started down this journey. But I love this technology. I love what you're doing. I love you so much, Gwen. It is so, so, so great to be with you today and for you to share your story here with all of us. And I will share a little bit with the machine too. I'll do a little video so you guys can see what we're talking about here with NuVision, which has all of Hannah Kroger's work in it, as well as how much is that database now, do you think? How much is in there?
It's almost 50,000. We've added
50,000?
things in the last few years. It started out when you first, because you were one of the first users.
Mhm,
Um, it started out at about 37,000. And then we added things over the years. The
mhm,
latest biggest revision was in 2022 when we added a bunch of um, other things that had to do with some different emotions, emotional remedies, some specific solutions, the weird and unusual stuff, the COVID stuff, because that's come up since then.
mhm,
And now we have the mini scan work set, which is more of an indicator panel. That alone is like 800 items, as things that someone can do like right now. I'd also say that just if people want to, besides what you do for people, if someone goes to nuvisionusa.com,
mhm.
there's a demo page, and I go into the technology and do some full appointment kind of demos. And if anyone ever contacts me and you guys are watching this, I always ask people, "Well, how'd you hear about NuVision?" And of course, they're going to say Louise's podcast. So, if you go there, you want to, just take a look and you'll find out more information. I do think that it's really, really incredible. I mean, it's really meant for the person who wants to take things to another level and healing, but especially when you're a practitioner and you're helping others.
Yes, yes, it's really stellar. It's really stellar work. So if you're all interested in that, we'll put the website here in the show notes. What's your website? It's NuVision USA, but what's yours?
It's gwenfosternd.com.
GwenFosterND.com. Okay, awesome. So we'll put all that in the show notes for all of you so you can take a look at that. And then if you have questions for Gwen or myself, please do reach out. We're here for you. This might be all new to you. Great. Then let's learn about it. Let's help you learn so that you can make good decisions in your life as well too. Yeah. So we'll put all that contact information there. And gosh, Gwen, it's been so awesome to be with you. Leave our audience with one brain tip. What's one brain tip?
Oh, brain tip would be, you know what? I'm gonna give you a weird one kind of.
Okay.
I mean, not something that most people would think of is if you've ever been told you're anemic, B12 or iron, those are important not to be deficient in because they affect circulation and brain fog and peripheral circulation to the brain. So a lot of people always think of anemia as being fatigue, but
Mhm.
anemia can have to do with blood clots. It can have to do with brain function, cognition, recall, memory. And I know a lot of people are more focused on amino acids and other things. And now long COVID is a big thing with brain issues more than I've ever seen. But I find
Mhm.
a lot of people, especially culturally, that are like vegan or vegetarian and they just don't get enough iron because of their diet, or maybe culturally because they're a lot of Indian people, for instance, don't eat meat. And I'm not saying you should eat meat if you don't want to, but then you have to supplement accordingly to make sure that you're not anemic.
Make sure you're not anemic. That's a really good tip. That's a great tip. And I find that as I get older, I have to have more sort of B12, more B6, more of that. Uh,
Mhm.
for sure too. Yeah.
Have
I
you seen a big uptick in people complaining to you since COVID, like in the last 4 years about
Oh,
brain?
yeah. You know what? I've seen people have like hearing issues and all kinds of things and blood clots and strokes and heart attacks. And I don't even want to think about the list that I think is happening because of or related to in some weird way to COVID.
Yeah, there's,
Whether they had COVID themselves or whether they've had the vaccine or, they just, or they've had it 2 or 3 times now. I mean, there's just it's different for everyone, but that's what I've seen.
it is a lot. A lot of people don't even realize that like dizziness and ringing in the ears are usually early stage cardiovascular signs. And
Mhm.
another thing that we learned in Hannah's class is that wrinkle in the ear, that crease in the
That
earlobe.
crease is yeah.
So I tell my clients to look in the mirror. If they have that crease in the earlobe, they probably need to do some cardiovascular work. And I've been doing a lot of functional, a lot of functional medicine, and I just put together a cardio panel through Quest that
Mhm.
is it's based on really Dr. Karazian's work, but it's ranking your
Mhm.
cardio risk profile from a 1 to a 10 based on oxidized LDL, homocysteine, HbA1c. But if you
Nice.
get the right test, you can actually
Mhm.
see where you are on a cardio risk profile of a 1 to a 10. And I'm finding that some people who did tell me they were dizzy, had ringing in the ears, or whatever, they're like eights. Eight is not good. And if you get a positive
Mhm.
test on fibrinogen, it's confirmation that you do have blood clots. I think the limitation with cardio testing in a cardiologist's office is they don't
Mhm.
traditionally use labs. They use EKGs or EEGs or all these things you're
Mhm.
strapped to, stress test. And sometimes they'll do a CAT scan or MRI, but they're usually isolated to one little spot of the body. That doesn't mean you don't have a blood clot in your leg or in your brain or somewhere that they didn't look. So I've had
Mhm.
clients tell me, no, I don't have a blood clot. My doctor already checked. And I'm like, how did they check?
Right. How
Because
do they find
there's
it?
not an effective way for doctors and cardiologists office to check for that.
No, and you know
So,
what I remember about that too, Gwen, and you probably do too, but I just gave somebody this remedy. Blood flukes, which is a
mhm,
parasite. Okay, it's just a little oval parasite that gets in the blood. Blood flukes cause those blood clots or can
mhm,
cause strokes. And so
mhm,
it really is about detoxing and rebuilding. It's both, and
mhm.
you've got to find the answers there and the root causes like you're describing here for people so that
And that's why they should take your class.
yeah, you guys got it. I mean, honestly, I learn more. from Hannah's work. And when Gwen and I started this way back when, and took those classes, then I did in naturopathic school. Like her book is my Bible. I use it every single day. And I'm grateful for all of the learning, but I will tell you that I learned so much. And you and I are great like detectives because of that. We can go
Mhm.
there and look at those things and then synthesize all that information and even take it further. But I still use her and I love her. I love her little remedies because they're targeted. So I'll
Mhm.
have people who've been to functional medicine doctors and they say, well, I already did a parasite cleanse. I already did this. I did that for 2 months. They tested my blood. I'm fine. I don't have GRD. And I'm like, well, that doesn't mean you don't have something else, you know,
Mhm.
and you still have these symptoms. You still have this stuff going on. The other thing I remember about cardiovascular that I never forgot is Hannah said to us, you're only as old as your arteries.
Mhm. Right.
And I think about how important that is because I'm getting older too. How important it is to do some cardio, to keep your arteries elastic, to keep your body healthy there, and to pay attention to that. Uh,
Well, on that
yeah.
subject, I forgot to mention, I did recently, because YouTube was banning my videos when I was talking against fluoride or certain things. So I moved everything to Rumble recently and it's all under just my name. But I did a cardiovascular webinar earlier this year. It was in February and it's just a thing, it's on there. But anyway, that, some of those tips are like, one thing I did when I researched for that webinar, and I had never heard this before, is someone had done research and said that by the time we're age 50, 10% of our body weight is plaque in the arteries. An
Ick.
average person, 10%. So if you weigh 150, you have 15 pounds of plaque in your arteries. And I thought, wow, that's not counting the plaque in your colon. That's like, that's why the regular detox and the stuff that I know you're going to teach in the HANA class is so important, because you're not going to hear this from your doctor. You're not going to hear this on mainstream news or media. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. Absolutely. Well, hey, it was such a gift to be with you today. I absolutely love and adore you. Keep up the good work. We'll let you know when this is out and you can share it with people. Yep.
Will.
And again, if you have questions for Gwen or myself, please do reach out. We'll put the information here so you can connect with her. How can people connect with you? Your website, through your website?
Website has my email,
Okay.
or the Rumble channel has some videos I've done on just health tips. And the NuVisionUSA.com website, and
Okay.
NuVision is NU. That has to find out more about NuVision.
Oh, that's so awesome. So, so, so awesome. And remember, everyone, follow your heart, but take your brain with you.
That's good advice.